everyone. I'm Kelly Farquharson, and you may know me from Instagram where I'm at classlab_Kelly. And I post every week there about a weekly series called Phonetics Friday. And during Phonetics Friday, we are always talking about how to bring clinical phonetics to life through various opportunities to embrace your expertise and improve your clinical practice through thinking about phonetics in a clinically relevant way. And so through several years of developing posts associated with that, I partnered with the Bjorem speech publications team and Dr. Carol Koch to publish and create the R inventory and facilitative context deck. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking to you about these products, how I would recommend using them, how you can think about using them, what the intention behind them was, and then some ways that you might be able to think outside the box to use them for your own use. So I'm going to begin with a little bit of information about how you can purchase these products. So they are available to you on the Bjorem Speech Publications site as a bundle. So you can get the R inventory and the facilitative context deck together as a bundle. And when you do so, it comes with a PDF of a handbook. And all of the protocols that you would use to administer the inventory are in the handbook. They are freely available through the handbook as many times as you need to print them. So you have access to those protocols for a countless number of times. You don't have to keep purchasing record forms. You buy it once and they are available to you into perpetuity. So that comes with the bundle, which is the inventory and the facilitative context deck together. You can also buy the facilitative context deck separately, and that would not come with the inventory and you would not have access to the handbook. But if you're just looking for a way to update your clinical practice and use an evidence-based material that has been developed with phonetic science in mind, this would be a great place to start. I'm going to start a little bit with the inventory, and then I'll eventually turn my camera around so you can kind of see the cards a little bit more up close and personal. So this is the inventory. If you are familiar with the Bjorem Speech products, you'll notice that this is about the same size as the Bjorem Speech Big Qs, whereas the facilitative context deck is the same size as the regular original Bjorem Speech Qs. So once you open the Bjorem Speech inventory deck, and you'll see it is organized just like every other product from the Bjorem Speech team. You will see an insert, and I'll talk about this in a second. And then there are several tabs organizing the cards. So the first tab says Facilitative Context. The second tab says Vocalic R. The third tab says R Clusters. And the fourth tab says Dialect Sensitive. So this is referring to a few phrases that are included in the inventory that will allow you to determine whether or not your client is perhaps using a non-rhotic dialect. What I love about these dividers is that on the back of each one, it is, for the facilitative context, it's color-coded to show you each category. And for the vocalic R, all of the words are on the back, so you can have access to them in a variety of ways. So for the R clusters, all the words are on the back. So it's a really nice, easy way to divide your cards up. The cards are a really nice big size that are easily accessible, and I think they're really nice to use to work with kids. The illustrations, our illustrator for this product was Aishwarya Vorha, and she is incredibly talented. These images are just absolutely beautiful. And the backs of the cards are also color-coded, which goes along with our rainbow coding scheme. So I want to talk first about the inventory and the color coding scheme. So the inventory is color-coded to align with the facilitative context, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that in a second. As you can see in the divider, there is a rainbow order. I realize this is flipped, but this is high front vowels, low front vowels, alveolars. So red, orange, yellow, the beginning of the rainbow is the front of the mouth. So the beginning of the vocal tract or oral cavity. So the beginning of the rainbow is the beginning or front of the mouth. High front, low front alveolars. And then we've got high back vowels, low back vowels, velars. So green, blue, purple is back of the mouth. Back of the rainbow, back of the mouth. And then we also have this deeper purple or violet category, which is our liquids. Each one of these can serve as a facilitative context, We describe in pretty good detail in the handbook what we mean by facilitative context, but essentially what we're referring to is using words that within therapy are able to help you determine what might be a helpful oral posture for a child to learn how to produce a particular sound. So this product is exclusively focused on R, which is a very challenging sound to make because, as you may remember, R is a liquid. That's the manner class of the production of R. And so just like how you might pour your liquid from one container to another and it takes the shape of that liquid, the R sound works the same way in our language. So when we pour the R sound into a word that has a front vowel, our tongue is actually much more anterior than it would be if we were pouring the R sound into a word that has a back vowel. And so we can actually really use this to our advantage and help children achieve appropriate oral postures for the production of an accurate R sound.
So I'm going to start here with showing you the inventory and the insert. So this is the insert that comes with the inventory, and it talks a little bit about what's inside and how to use it. And I'm going to walk through that with you here too. It talks about our 7 different facilitative contexts and different ways that you can use this product. So I have my facilitative context inventory available here on my Microsoft Surface, and I want to show you the protocols. So this is the facilitative context R inventory protocol here. Here is the vocalic R clusters inventory, and here is the dialect sensitive phrases. And so I wanted to just quickly show you that, particularly focusing on the facilitative context inventory, because as you can see, it's color coded. And so you'll show these pictures to whichever child you're testing. So here's an example of a river. And this is one of the red categories, which is a high front vowel. So you can see how it's red here. And on the back, you have the category, which is also color coded. You have the target word, which is transcribed for you in IPA. And then should you need a prompt, there is a way to give a delayed imitation prompt where you would say, this is a river. It is long and winding. What is this word? And so we've got these, again, color coded. And so there aren't many items on purpose to keep it super short and brief and to give you a sense of which category might be most facilitative for the child that you're testing. And so if you say, for instance, like maybe the low front vowels, the orange category, you would know it's most facilitative because they would get one or more item right in that category. So after you have administered the entire inventory, whichever section has the most items, and there's a different number of items in each category, but whichever category has the most items is going to be your most facilitative context. So let's say one or both of the targets in the low front vowel category are determined to be correct, an acoustically acceptable R, that would be your most facilitative context. And so then the best part is that you will be able to use this facilitative context for R therapy to just go right into this deck and pick out the orange cards, because the inventory has already helped you figure out that this is the facilitative context. And so you can go right into the facilitative context for R therapy deck, pick out the orange cards, and these are going to be the ones that you would start with in therapy. So these are going to be the ones that have the facilitative context for that child and where you might want to start your therapy sessions, because this is a context that helps the child achieve an oral posture in which they're able to get an accurately or at least acoustically perceptible R sound. And so it's really that easy. Whichever color you have the most items correct, you would just go to this rainbow order here in the deck and pick that color out. From there, once you have established that correct R sound, you kind of let this rainbow order figure your direction here. So you can also see this is the insert for the facilitative context deck. So you can see it's smaller because it's the smaller size, these cards here. And this color key is going to help you figure out which direction to go. So if we did start with orange, which is the low front vowel category, and we developed and established an acoustically perceptible and accurate R, we can go in either direction along the rainbow for our next step. So this tells us what to do next. If we get a good solid R in the orange categories, maybe we'll move to the yellow category or the red category. So that helps us know, like, these are all front of the mouth sounds. And so that allows us to target the R sound in an oral posture that is facilitative for that particular child. And eventually you'll work your way all the way through the rainbow.
So that's how the R inventory works and pairs with the facilitative context for our therapy deck. The other sections of the inventory I want to talk about too. So in the next section we have vocalic R's, and these are, so a few examples of these. We've got bar, tear, pour, and so these are the vocalic R's that you're familiar with. However, they may not be facilitative context. And so there's a few important things to talk about there. The first is that our facilitative contexts were designed based on phonetic science. We know that front vowels can be facilitative for R because they're unrounded vowels. And so sometimes that creates a nice opportunity to work on the R sound without getting that lip rounding that we often get with the W substitution. At the same time, our back vowels can be facilitative for R because they require that tongue root retraction, which is also required for an accurate production of R. But because back vowels are rounded, sometimes they're not as facilitative as a front vowel might be, just depending on each individual child. So the inventory allows you to really kind of determine that. We also want you to be able to capture how the child is producing all R sounds and all clusters. And so we have also included the vocalic R and other R clusters as a part of the inventory, so you can really get a comprehensive phonemic inventory associated with all of the different sounds that R actually makes. And so this is a really comprehensive product. The nice thing about this too is it also allows you to be super dynamic in how you administer it. As far as the facilitative context piece goes, you can administer any one section of that inventory. You can administer just the red words or just the purple words. You don't have to administer the entire thing. This is not a standardized or norm reference product. And so you have a lot of flexibility because it's an inventory. It is not an assessment and it is not a screener, because in order to be either one of those things, it would have to be either standardized or norm referenced or both. So this has a lot of clinical flexibility. You can give any part of it at any point in time. You can use it for progress monitoring. And so the vocalic R was important for us to include this because we wanted you to have an opportunity to also see beyond the context that are naturally thought of to be as facilitative, what else is this child doing with different vocalic R postures and different R clusters. So for your R clusters, we have BR, PR, TR, DR, KR, GR, all different kinds of 2 and 3 element R clusters here. And so you'll show these images to the child and have them produce that sound, that word, so you can get a sense of how they can produce R in a variety of R clusters. Some of the R clusters are also in the facilitative context list because the KR and GR clusters can be really facilitative because they're velar, so they require the tongue to be pulled up and back. Other clusters aren't as facilitative, but something else I want to help you think through there is that we have determined these 7 facilitative contexts based on phonetic science, but as you know, when we work with kids who have speech sound disorders, anything goes. So it's absolutely possible that one of these vocalic R's or one of these particular R clusters happen to be facilitative for a particular child you're working with. So if you do administer the facilitative context portion of the inventory and don't find any context that's facilitative, so no words are produced accurately, which is possible, we would encourage you to move on to the vocalic R and R cluster portion of the inventory and just see if by chance any of those linguistic contexts help the child produce an acoustically perceptual R. The last part of the R inventory is totally optional. All parts of the R inventory are optional, but this is the dialect sensitive phrases. And so I want to talk a little bit about what we mean by that. So the dialect specifically that we're referring to here is a non-rhotic dialect. So you may notice in some dialects of English, so Eastern American English, so Boston or New York, British English, South African English, Australian, New Zealand, other areas of the world that speak a dialect of English may use a non-rhotic dialect. And this means that in some linguistic contexts, the R is not obligatory. So you do not have to produce an R. And you may know this from kind of the common colloquialism that's thought of with speakers of Boston English, where they might say "park the car" instead of "park the car." And so what you'll notice is that there's a very specific context in which the child or the speaker is able to produce or does consistently produce the R sound as a part of that dialect. So what we see is that in those non-rhotic dialects, the R is accurate and preserved in the pre-vocalic context. So anytime the R occurs before a vowel, you will hear a correct R. So as an example, our Boston friends would not say the Boston Red Sox, right? They would say Red Sox. So that R pre-vocalically before the vowel is preserved. Where we see it change is when the R is vocalic. And specifically, R is used as a boundary between two vowels. And so when you have a phrase in which you've got a vocalic R, so one word ends in a vocalic R, and the next word begins with a consonant, you will see that R is dropped. So in a phrase like yearbook, where the first word ends in a vocalic R, year, and the second word begins with a consonant, book, you would probably see that R dropped and it would sound more like yearbook. By contrast, if the phrase, the first word in the phrase ends with a vocalic R like year, and the second word in the phrase begins with a vowel like end, you would hear the R preserved, year end. So you would hear yearbook, year end. So even though the first word in both phrases is year and ends with the same vocalic R, you're going to see the way that the R is actually treated is different depending on the linguistic context. Is the next sound a consonant or is the next sound a vowel? So we've developed 7 pairs, 14 different phrases in which we have the same first word in the phrase that ends in a vocalic R, the second word in the phrase in one phrase begins with a consonant, and in the second phrase begins with a vowel. And so you're able to then determine, is the child dropping the R all the time or are they preserving it sometimes? You would anticipate that they would preserve it before a vowel, but that they would drop it before a consonant. And so if you're thinking, I'm not sure if this child is using a rhotic or non-rhotic dialect, or if they have an R distortion, I can't quite tell, this will help you figure this out. And so this was inspired by, I lived in Boston for a few years, but also I'm an active social media user. I'm on a lot of SLP Facebook groups, and it never fails that probably once a month I see an SLP say, I wish I could just ship all of my kids up to Boston. It doesn't really work that way. People in Boston can say R. They say R pre-vocalically, and they say R in certain contexts. And so if you want to try and figure out if your child is speaking a rhotic or non-rhotic dialect, or figure out if perhaps they have a R distortion that's related to a delay or disorder, these phrases will help you figure that out. So what you would see as you're indicating the child's correct or incorrect R production, or the presence or absence of the R in their production of these phrases, if there is some sort of distortion, delay, disorder, you would expect that they would have no R in any of the 14 phrases. By contrast, if they do have a non-rhotic dialect, at least 7 of the times that they're saying these phrases, the phrases that have a vocalic R followed by a vowel, they should have an R present. If it's a non-rhotic dialect, there will be an R when the following word starts with a vowel. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with me learning more about this product. The R Inventory and Facilitative Context for R Therapy bundle is available now on bjoremspeech.com. Buy them as a bundle and get the handout that is sent to you as a PDF. That handout, the handbook, will also be updated actively. So as we get new and fascinating questions from our customers, we'll be updating that handbook. And so once you purchase this, you get lifetime updates with that handbook. Any new interesting questions that we get, any tidbits or tips and tricks we learn along the way of using this tool, that will be updated in the handbook and a new version will be sent to you. So it is a lifetime of information. And also, as a reminder, all of the protocols that are associated with our inventory are in the handbook for you to print and use as many times as you need to. So thank you again for your interest. I'm so excited for this product and hope that you will use it and love it too.